this idea of serial killers, the Patsy stuff, and
Right.
maybe there's another way to be looking at this phenomenon. So I'm gonna open up to you, dude. You are
Awesome,
the
man.
researcher here. The floor is yours.
I thought you were gonna say you are the
Awesome,
serial
man.
killer here. So.
Yeah, this is an intervention. We know what you've been
Right.
doing.
Hmm.
Oh man. Well, I will say that just having the opportunity to come on to discuss Waco, I think, you know, I appreciate very much just because Waco for me was, one of those that were my effectively, was my red pill, right?
Yeah.
It was my red pill moment as far as um it was really Ruby Ridge, Waco, and OKC. And Ruby Ridge for me stood out more than anything, mainly because I kind of like I related to Sammy, right? To Randy's son,
Right.
right? Out on the farm. I grew up in Northwest Arkansas,
Mm.
out on the farm with my dog. My dad's a truck driver. My mom was a horse trainer, and just like it definitely it was something that listening to and reading about what had actually occurred from their point of view and how Stryker, their dog, was shot in the back after running playfully up to the federal agents and prancing around them. And I mean, it's just like,
Mm-hmm.
and then to shoot Sammy in the back, the little boy,
Yeah.
as he's fleeing. I mean, just because, I mean, imagine if you had federal agents and unbeknownst to you, you aren't even aware they're federal agents who are encroaching on your property.
Yeah.
You've been trained as a child to protect your property, but let alone when they're firing upon your dog.
Yep.
They kill your dog and you say, "Son of a bitch, you killed my dog."
Yep.
And then you fire back because you're a young boy, you don't know any better, and honestly, what do you do in that situation? And I would have shot probably.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. It's
Yeah.
hard to say.
Yeah, I
But
mean,
anyway,
it's no, it's funny. You just unlocked a memory before we get into the main thing. Is like I also grew up on a farm in the middle of nowhere, and my mom was also a horse trainer. That's very bizarre that we
wow.
share that. I was like a barrel racer up until I was 16. So
Wow,
I did like
that's
gymkhanas and
amazing.
stuff. So, but being on a farm in the woods, you understand this idea of like what it means when there's like an intruder. Like I think more. Obviously, we all houses can have intruders, but when you have this property that you defend, it's yours, and all of a sudden there's like these new things here that don't belong. You just reminded me that I grew up near a military base. It was like a mile down the road. It was West Point, and every
Wow.
summer they would do their training. And like it wasn't our farm; it belonged to West Point. My parents were coaches for the equestrian team, and
Wow.
they used the woods as the war training grounds. So every summer, this might have been my red pill moment. Like as a little kid, helicopters are landing in my backyard, literally, and
Oh
soldiers
my God.
are jumping out with guns. But it's like they called it Miles gear. It was like a fancy laser tag,
Yeah.
and smoke bombs are going off all the time. Our horses have to get accustomed to the sound of loud booms because it's like fake
Holy
flash grenades. So I was like, man, my whole life, this is probably why I'm paranoid, right? Because I'm like, the
Yeah.
military is constantly dropping into my backyard. And then one
Oh
morning,
my
I
God.
woke up to let the dogs out, and our entire house was surrounded by soldiers on their stomachs with the guns pointed at our house.
Oof.
Literally, swear, this is insane. And I was like, I was really young, and my mom was already awake. She's like, I'm just gonna go out and ask them what's going on.
Oh God.
We've been accustomed to the woods being infiltrated, but now our yard. And she was like, I'm gonna tell them that they're lying in our dog shit. And
And would
so
you
That's
like
so
some
funny.
coffee?
yeah. So she goes out, and the guy in charge is just like, they messed up their orienteering, and now they just have to go through with it. So my whole life, I'm like, at any minute, they're gonna jump out of
Yeah,
the
man.
sky and do it. And then I can go on forever about the things I used to do. I used to pull pranks on the military all the time.
That's
I might
amazing.
be the reason they like didn't do very well in overseas wars because I kept messing up their situation. But that's another story for another day.
Being being so close to that is fascinating, honestly, man. Like
Hmm.
I can't even imagine what impact that would have on me because just growing up where I did, a very small rural community, the local police didn't have a whole lot to do.
Hmm.
So if you had some sort of like, and I had, and I thank God for this, the instinct that I sort of, and I think that my parents kind of helped cultivate that very instinct of just kind of individuality, but I had this strong rejection of authority from day one,
Yeah.
and it was something that, wasn't necessarily like visible within the context of my parents and how they kind of approached, let's say, just structured authority in general. And
Mm-hmm.
and so I bucked the system from day one, and I very much rejected the public school system as well. And
Yeah.
so, and then of course I idolized a lot of the wrong. Right. I kind of was drenched in the celebrity culture,
Mm-hmm.
which I think is so it is a honestly it's I think it's a negative phenomena that's effectively disrupting, American culture in general, right? Is just the celebrity influence and how it sort of, I believe, it's fulfilling this sort of new age esoteric ideological system of control that is within the principle of the God whole,
Mm.
that I think that people can't quite isolate and define for themselves at a real fundamental level, to where they can kind of, at least I think this is where we find ourselves in this path of the ideological subversion, where we're consistently, misdirected.
Yeah.
And that is where I view the culture war stems from,
Mm-hmm.
is just kind of this cultivated duality that's really deceptive in nature inherently, and designed for that very reason, I think, to effectively pit us against each other within this unfortunate framework of the current structured system. And I think that that is where all of us consistently fall into place, and at least our the hypocritical aspects of our character are greatly unacknowledged. And I try so very hard just to, you know, at least reflect in honest terms within my own framework, psychologically, to figure out where I can position myself to hopefully defend against, the false narratives.
Mm-hmm.
But again, I'm saying, like, growing up where I did, it had an impact on me because I devoutly despised the police.
Mm-hmm.
Like, just from my experience of embracing drug culture in a negative way, it had a hugely negative impact on my life. But
Yeah.
at the same time, it's like, it kind of also led me to this very interesting place, philosophically, where I'm ultimately grateful that I went down this path, because
Mm-hmm.
it helped me realize the the current state of the justice system, right? And the excruciating details and aspects of that very much prove out to be effectively, you know, it's really a system that protects predators and punishes victims more often than you would think.
Oh yeah.
And yeah, and that's something that, you know, it's just undeniable at this point, right? And to witness the level of federal cover-ups and how they've been facilitated throughout some of these various scandals and extraordinary historical events, like, let's say, I always remember the Finders cult because of Ramon J. Martinez, the U.S. Customs agent, who kind of blew the whistle until CIA stepped in
Hmm.
and effectively removed all the evidence and either destroyed it or gave it back to the Finders cult. And
Wow.
that's a very strange story, by the way, obviously, because I think there are deep ties to the intelligence community, and I think that this was effectively a child sex trafficking operation where they were
Mm.
legitimately auctioning off children as well. If you listen to what Ted Gunderson has to say about all of this, like, Ted Gunderson has a very interesting statement in regard to the finders. He actually says that it was a CIA front, and Ted Gunderson ran the LA, the LA FBI field office, right, for quite some time,
Why do
and
I know that name?
and
Is that just from the FBI? That name sounds so familiar. I feel like I've seen that in other
yeah, no,
stories.
he's come up often in
Yeah.
the terms of a lot of these investigations, including the Fort Bragg murders and Dr. Jeffrey McDonald.
Okay.
Definitely he was involved in interviewing. He became a private investigator after his days in the FBI.
Okay.
And then he claims that he was getting all of this information and evidence from contacts within the Bureau that were still effectively like providing him with evidence and documents that would prove out that there was this very well established, seemingly it looked as if, again, you have these plausible deniability private front organizations that are essentially being utilized by intelligence in order to provide that plausible deniability as a CIA cutout, in order to, of course, it's more than just it's also, so of course you have human trafficking, but you have to also consider the enterprise as a whole, right? This is something that I think people are unaware of for the most part, where like this provides a window into that intersections where you have targeted assassinations, you have, you know, child pornography, snuff film, or organ harvesting,
Right.
you know, prostitution,
It's like the dark
drug
web
smuggling,
in the real
weapons
world.
smuggling.
The dark web
Yeah,
and the,
exactly.
like pre-dark web, real world, crazy stuff.
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
you said you were going to say
And
Gunderson was going to say that the CIA, that was a CIA front for sure.
absolutely, yeah. So, and by the way, that there's direct evidence of this. I think Athena Veronis is a very great kind of key prominent individual who provides a direct connection to the intelligence apparatus. But again, he says Ted Gunderson describes the finders as a CIA front established in the 1960s. Members specially trained government kidnappers with top clearance and protection in their assigned task of stealing children, torturing and sexually abusing them, sometimes involving them in satanic orgies, bloody rituals, and murder of other children with the slaughter of animals, which he's 100% right. This is all proven by, you know, New York. There's a NYPD detective, James Rothstein. He's a very interesting resource. He had ties to military intelligence. Actually, he was the one who he was the one who arrested Frank Sturgis at Marita Lorenz's apartment when he was on his way to assassinate her.
Wow.
Yeah, and
Wow.
Frank Sturgis tells him, so he gains Frank Sturgis's trust while he sits down with him. Well, first of all, he's hiding in Marita Lorenz's apartment waiting for Sturgis because he gets a tip that Marita Lorenz is going to be assassinated today. And so, and again, Marita Lorenz, right? Her father was a Nazi SS U-boat captain.
Right.
Paperclip vibes all day long
Oh,
is the
yeah.
first thing I'm thinking. And then
course.
what happens instantly? She comes over to the States and effectively becomes a child spook, honestly.
Mm-hmm.
And inevitably, she's wrapped up in the CIA's operation to assassinate Fidel Castro, and they send Marita Lorenz to Cuba. And she falls in love with Fidel.
Wow.
And she inevitably becomes pregnant and then wakes up no longer with child.
Really?
Really. And then she's brought back, put into a CIA safe house. And she claims that she witnessed Howard Hunt, Frank Sturgis, and all the usual suspects convening in these CIA safe houses and black sites where they were planning the Dallas operation. And she actually said that she rode with them across state lines to Dallas to take weapons for the operation as well, before the CIA pilots like Tosh Plumley and Barry Seal allegedly were the pilots who piloted in the kill squads to Dallas that day. And so you had multiple
Holy
kill teams
crap.
that were stationed. One was at the airport, and one was at right. And so you have the triangulated fire, which is perfectly staged, which had already been exposed as the obvious playbook from the Chicago and Florida examples of the
Mm-hmm.
plots gone awry,
Yep. Wait, how
where they already
pregnant
had a patsy.
how pregnant was she? Do we know?
Oh man, honestly, I don't remember, but I do know that this is 100% the story
Are
from
you
Marita Lorenz,
questioning?
which is one of the crazy.
Are you questioning
Yeah,
like
it
the
is.
timeline of her pregnancy?
I'm just questioning, like, was it an abortion or was it like they took the kid?
I can't get a straight answer, and I don't
Right.
even think she knows because she claims she was drugged,
Mm.
right? And that
So if she was
she
drugged, they
was.
probably didn't care about the kid, I'd assume. And maybe they wanted
I
to get
wouldn't.
rid of the kid, or they wanted the kid and now the kid is someone in the world, you know, like
It's probably Trudeau.
that's right. That's right. You stole it from I was just going to say it. You read my mind, Austin.